Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm your host, Ian Carlos Crawford, and joining me as my lovely co-host, I have my best friend, Dr.
Kimberly and Southwick.
Hi, and we have joining us a Buffy icon. You've played 3 different characters. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, 3 characters on Buffy and 1 on Angel.
Right, yes.
Yeah. So 4 characters in the Buffyverse. Yeah, I'm Camden Toy. I played one of the gentlemen in Hush, the skin-eating demon Gnarl in season 7, same time, same place, the episode. And I played multiple episodes. I played the original Uber Vamp. And then in Angel on season 5, I played the Prince of Lies on the flashback episode to World War II called Why We Fight on the German submarine.
Do you want to tell us your Buffy origin, how you got this job portraying so many different characters in the same universe and all that?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. The very first project I did with them was to play one of the gentlemen in Hush, and I got that through the usual way, which was through my agent. My agent called me and said, Buffy the Vampire Slayer wants to see you tonight at 6 o'clock or 6:30 or whatever it was. And I was like, tonight? Because usually you have a day or two, to look at the sides, to like kind of prepare. And I was like, what? What about the script? And she was like, there's no script, just go. And I was like, so I'm thinking this is foreboding. This is for an actor to walk into an audition with no script, no preparation. It's a little scary, and it does happen, but not that frequently. Usually they give you the sides of some sort before ahead of time. So I walk in and I watched Buffy before, but I wasn't really up to date with what was going on the show that season. And they were like, okay, the character was called the Laughing Men originally. And Lonnie Hammerman, the casting director, was like, okay, we're probably going to change that name because the episode has no dialogue. There's no dialogue. So we're probably going to change that. So there's no laughing. Don't laugh. So we'd like you to do an improv. So we'd like you to float in. I'm like, float.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll float in. So we would like you to float in, take out a scalpel, and cut this young man's heart out, and then float back out again. And meanwhile, smiling. I'm like, okay. So because of my physical background in clowning and mime and physical theater and martial arts, I approximated floating by, if you move just your legs from the knee down, which is quite a trick, but if you move them just from the knee down and not from the knee up, you can actually approximate floating.
Huh.
Which is what I did. I sort of approximated that kind of floating kind of thing,
I'm gonna try that in the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can float into. Kim's a professor. She can float into her next classroom.
What do you teach? What do you teach?
I teach poetry and English.
Wonderful. We need more of that. So I float in. I take the scalpel out. I cut out the young man's heart. I take it and I float back out again. And Joss literally goes, okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, great. Oh, I'm gonna have nightmares now. Thank you. And I thought, well, I either have the job or he thinks I'm a total psycho.
Right.
and actually Joss talks about that in the commentary on Hush. He said, the tall one there is Doug Jones, the shorter one there is Camden Toy, and the two of them scared me so much in the room in broad daylight with no makeup, just smiling, that I knew that they were going to give so much to these roles. So
I mean, it's wild. You just doing the smile. I was like, oh yeah, that's the gentleman's smile.
Yeah. So that's how I, was originally, got cast in that. And they, it was such an unusual episode. People were like, oh, we're going to definitely bring these characters back. And that never happened.
Yeah.
But I think because they were so complete, it was hard to know how would you bring them back,
Yeah.
So I stayed in touch with casting. This was season 4. I stayed in touch with casting, but they did not call me back until season 7. So yeah, it's, it was one of those, for whatever reason. And I would call them occasionally, go, hey, I heard you were casting blah blah blah. How about, would you have me in to read for that? And they were like, well, we're really thinking of going in a different direction. And I'm like, okay, so I think what it was is they didn't really trust my skill as an actor because I didn't have any lines.
Right. Which is funny because when you're brought back for Gnarl, you have a lot of lines.
I have a lot of lines, yeah.
Mostly
and actually, pardon me.
It's mostly talking.
It's mostly talking, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Lonnie Hammerman called me for Gnarl, she was like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. And I said, yeah, it's been a while.
You're like, I noticed.
And she was like, she was very apologetic because, usually if you've already been on the show, they don't audition you again.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, listen, I'm kind of apologetic about this, but, the gentleman didn't have any dialogue. And this is a character that has a lot of dialogue. Would you mind coming in and auditioning for this role? And I was like, of course, I'd be happy to audition for the role. So so that's how they had me in. And because, of course, it's under a lot of makeup, I could do another role and nobody even noticed it at first. I think what was happening is they were, in fact, she even told me, she said, we're having trouble casting this role, Gnarl. I think that, Jane Espenson, who wrote the episode, she was originally conceiving of Gnarl as kind of small and Gollum-like. So they were, I think, auditioning small people, petite women, petite actors. But for whatever reason, nobody was like really connecting to that role. They weren't really connecting to what the essence of Gnarl. So somebody in either casting or the writer's room remembered me and were like, Camden Toy's kind of creepy. Why don't you give him a call?
I mean,
so I ended up auditioning for that. But I was very lucky. I got the sides on a Friday, so I had Saturday and Sunday to play with that role. So by the time I walked in on Monday, I was having way too much fun with that.
I mean, I think it's pretty apparent that it was clear that you were having fun. Like,
yeah,
that character is really memorable.
Yeah, that was a really fun role to play. I mean, even Marty Noxon, who was the showrunner in season 7, was like, "You do creep really well."
You're like, thanks. So for the Turok Han, was that more they just called you back and were like, "Hey, do you want to do this?"
With the Turok Han, I think because he was a killing machine, basically. I think they were originally thinking just a stunt guy. Mm. And it was Marty Noxon in one of the writers' meetings who said, "Yeah, but we really need somebody to bring it to life, like in the close-ups and like in the acting, like it's like somebody like a Camden Toy." And Rob Hall, my makeup guy, was in that meeting, and he said, "Well, we have Camden's molds of his face. We could start, sculpting that makeup on his." And she was like, So I did not audition for that role. They just called me in. I ended up having a stunt double. I did not have a stunt double for Gnarl. I did all my own stunts in Gnarl. But I did have a stunt double for the Turok Han. It was Ryan Watson, who, and he's now a stunt coordinator. He was the stunt coordinator for the original Wonder Woman movie. He's an amazing martial artist. But I was very lucky. He and the stunt coordinator allowed me to give a lot of input into how the Turok Han fought, because I did not want him to be sort of a typical kick and chop vampire. I thought of him as sort of like the Tasmanian devil, like he's just like spinning.
That's that's accurate though. That's how it comes off.
That's how it comes off. Yeah, I wanted him to be sort of like Taz, and so I thought of him as a lot. So we did a lot of spinning stuff, and because of my martial arts background, I was able to like do a lot of my own stunts, even though Ryan was there and he did a lot of the stunts as well, and particularly the stunts that were really dangerous, like falling 50 feet on wires or like running along a wall. Those are things that Ryan did. I mean, there was no but they would occasionally come to me and go, can you do like a one-handed flip into a spinning hook kick? And I'd be like, I'll give it a shot.
I'll try.
Because it had been a while since I had done that. And I was like, yeah, I was able to do that. But the physicality of the Turok Han it really took me to the edge, because I was, I was a lot older than Ryan. Ryan was in his 20s, so it really took me to the edge, because the spinning and twisting techniques that we use a lot, which come out of Chinese Kempo, were very hard on your body.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the harder monster that you played, you would say, like the harder one to?
Physically, yes. Verbally, no, because there's no dialogue. I was so disappointed they had no dialogue. I was like, come on, you got to give me some dialogue. I was like, no dialogue.
Did you do it the growling, or no? Was that someone else?
I did growling on set. They enhanced it in the mix. They did enhance it. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
But like the scenes with me and Juliet Landau, for instance, I mean we are having dialogue, we're just not talking. I mean, but I really thought of myself as sort of the lap dog to the first, so there's a lot of communication that happens in those scenes between when Juliet is the first.
It's funny that you just brought that up, because we just earlier today recorded for that specific episode. And we were talking about how good, I mean, she's fantastic. And Kim and I interviewed her. God, that was a year ago now, Kim, right?
It was like a year. Yeah. I don't know. Almost a year.
Yeah. It was like a year ago we interviewed, and she's like very, very great. And it's funny having her jump back into the show and like bringing both of you back for an episode that's like, you're kind of like, she's playing Drusilla, but the first playing her, so you're both kind of playing new characters, and it makes it feel more like nostalgic, bringing back people and stuff like that.
Sure.
And like adds to the finality of it.
She's a very physical actress too.
Yeah,
so
totally.
It was probably fun for y'all to work together, like intellectually, but also like bodily.
Oh yeah. What was also fun about those roles, about those scenes, was that generally when you have I'm dunking James and pulling him down and like smacking him around, and generally when for the safety of the actors, particularly the series regulars, they would often have the stunt double do that with them, but there was no, his regular stunt double was away that time, so they put a stunt double in a wig. And they were like, well, that's not going to work, because as soon as he gets wet, we're going to have to take the wig off, dry it, put it back on. So the director was like, hey, James, would you mind doing your own stunts with this? And James and I were like, James and I both come from the theater. We're not used to having stunt doubles. So we were like, yeah, So I'm dunking him, and then I pull him out and I throw him down and I'm smacking him around. And, and there's this one point when I'm I'm screaming and I'm yelling and like punching him, and he's totally selling it, but I'm just going right past him. It's just that the camera angle is such that it looks like I'm hitting him, right? And he was selling it so much that the director and the crew, watching this on monitor, was convinced I was kicking the shit out of it. And they literally like cut. They were like running in and like, James, are you okay? And James like, yeah. So yeah, he was selling it. I was just like going right past him, and he was like,
I love that.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
So you weren't the Turok Han for the finale, right?
No, they decided, because the very, very, very first Turok Han sort of the leader, the leader or the however, or the
Right.
alpha, he gets killed. So they decide to not bring me back. I was hoping that they would, but they decided not to. No. Now, although they used digital scans of both Ryan and me to digitally enhance and digitally create the army of Ubervamps at the end.
That's
So
cool. So you're kind of there.
I'm kind of there, yeah.
I love that. Which of those three characters was your favorite?
Well, I always say that when people ask me that, it's a little like asking a parent who their favorite child is. But that said, the character Gnarl was so much fun to play and so verbal and also physical. And, he was so complete, and no pun intended, there was a lot of meat to sink my teeth into. That's probably my favorite television role that I've ever done.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I mean, that's it's so cool that you got to play, because well, Buffy, played into horror tropes. It wasn't always the monsters weren't always scary, but I feel like you got to play.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Every single role that I played on Buffy and Angel were horror characters, which, and often the demons aren't horror characters. It's like Skip on Angel. It's like, hey Angel, would you like some buffalo chicken wings? It's like, he's kind of, a lot of times they're comic relief, or, Lauren is like, he sings and he's quippy, and, so yeah, exactly. A lot of the demons aren't horror characters. That's exactly right. So I felt very lucky that all the roles that I played were true horror characters. I mean, I can't remember who said it. I think it was a TV promo that said, that compared Gnarl as being, the Hannibal Lecter of the demon world. And that's truly what he is. I mean, it's amazing.
He's terrifying. Yeah, I mean, even before you see him physically, he's terrifying, Well,
that's what I love about it, about the fact that it's kind of like it's kind of like the shark in Jaws, the way you don't see him for like a good bit of the movie. It's that kind of thing. And then you see his shadow. Then you see his hand. And then he's like comes into frame, and you're like, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
How much of a pain in the ass was that costume? Because that's a full body costume, right?
I had the very, very first day, I'm in that suit over 12 hours. Oof. And I couldn't go to the bathroom. Yeah, they kept saying, Rob Hall, my makeup guy on the show, kept saying, we can get a hole. And I'm like, oh, are you gonna hold it too? Because I got finger extensions. I can't quite I said, no, I think I'll just hold it. It's fine. The second day, about halfway through the day, they actually have to peel me out of it, because they have to put me in a harness, because they had me on a wire. I don't know if you remember, they pulled me out of frame at one point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when they're sort of peeling me out, halfway peeling me out, I go, I'll be right back. So I run and use the restroom. But yeah, the first day I actually, I'm in it 12 hours. A good 12 hours.
Was that like a normal, were you normally in the makeup for that long, or was that like an extra long day?
No, that's not unusual, but that's the only character on the show that I was in a bodysuit. Everything else was, face and head, and maybe chest, like Turok Han was like a chest plate, and a head and a face, but there was, and hands, of course, but Gnarl was a full bodysuit. I mean, there was no wardrobe. I mean, the wardrobe, the makeup was the wardrobe, Yeah, interestingly enough, I mean, that's another reason why I think that's such a fun role,
Nowadays for TV, you think they do something like that? You think it would all be CGI for most shows, or
some shows it is. I think they have gotten over using just all CGI. I think on Grimm, most of the characters were CGI, but I think they're realizing that they're better off using practical effects enhanced by CGI than just full CGI. So a lot of times they're actually using a combination. I think that's more popular nowadays. For a while, the CGI guys were like, step aside to like to all the the practical effects guys and gals.
Do you think that's smart of them to use both?
Oh, absolutely. I think, Howard Berger was talking about that in an interview recently, and how he was saying how, it's not unusual now that we use the two together. That it's a partnership, and I think that's great,
Better
you-
than having to be in the full bodysuit all day and not be able to pee, and better than the 100% CGI that is just detached from.
Well, I think the 100% CGI, I think if, we were sold a bill of goods that it would be realistic. And the fact is, it isn't. It isn't real. It isn't real. You're losing the actual performance of the actor. So because of that, I think it's much more interesting. And Guillermo del Toro understood that. I mean, whenever he could have somebody in a suit or in makeup, he would. And then maybe like that character in Hellboy that has the big ball that comes out of his that, I know we all think that's all CGI. Well, the ball is CGI, but that's actually an actor in a suit. And
it gives his movies like a certain
effect.
It gives his movies like a really good look too. I think it works.
Yes, exactly.
I was going to ask you, have you watched the show Evil by any chance?
I have not. What is that?
So it's on, I've been streaming it on Peacock, whatever. I forget what station, or Paramount Plus. What is that?
Or NBC does
NBC.
Peacocks, yeah.
NBC. So it's like a show where it's like a little bit of Buffy, where it like mixes monsters with like real, like some of the bad guys are real, sometimes they're monsters. It's like they're a little bit X-Files too, where they're like investigating. It's like a woman who used to be a cop, now she works for like the church, and her and a priest investigate supernatural. They do a lot of that mixing stuff. And there's actually a sleep paralysis demon whose name is evading me at this moment, but reminds me so much of Gnarl. He's got like the long, but he's all black. He's like makeup, but it's like a full body suit. He's got like the long hands, the like weird headpiece. And I think it works. I think it's one of their scariest monsters. And because it's clearly someone in a bodysuit, so it can like crawl on the characters or whatever. And I do think you're right that it's better. Like, okay, you can enhance it with CGI, but like if that was a CGI thing crawling on them in bed, it wouldn't look as scary. It would just look like, a blob, right?
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot to be said for, like your performances. Like you said, they went with you instead of a stunt person because you could act, and like you still see that in the face, even though it's a bunch of makeup, you can still tell the person's like giving a performance. And I think that's like the big difference with like CGI versus the practical.
Yeah, and I was very lucky in that all my makeups on Buffy and Angel were thin enough that I was able to act through them. I mean, there was nothing where I was like, where my expressions were all coming through very, very much so,
Yeah, it wasn't like Power Rangers where it's just like a big blob suit and you move your arms.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
What would be one of your favorite scenes you got to play out across Buffy and Angel?
Oh, favorite scenes. That's a good question. I think probably the fight scene that happened in the construction site with Buffy as the Turok Han, and we actually did shoot that in a construction site. And there is that one part where we're up on a scaffold and she kicks me and I fall a good 50 feet, and that's Ryan falling. And unfortunately, about a week later, I get called in by one of the producers, and they're like, hey, we didn't get enough coverage in that scene. We need to reshoot some of that scene, and that construction site wasn't available. So we actually had to reconstruct that construction site in studio. And you would be hard pressed to tell that there was a difference between the two.
Yeah,
It's amazing what we can do with lighting and set and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I love that scene that leads up to, you know, her taking my head off. And Sarah is always very concerned about the safety of the other people on the set. And, you know, they kept saying, Sarah, you need to pull that tighter. And of course it's, you know, elastic. It's not going to hurt me.
right.
And she's like, no, I don't want to hurt Camden. And yeah, I mean, so, and I was like, it's okay, Sarah. And she was like, so I had to like, I had to sort of lean in it. I had to sort of sell it, you know. But yeah, that probably that fight scene that leads up to her taking my head off is pretty exciting.
How long did that fight scene take to shoot? Like, was it like a couple of days, a week?
I think we were I can't remember if we were on location 2 nights. I think it was 2 nights for that construction site. And then of course we had to reshoot, we had to do some pickups in studio. So, you know, 2.5 days.
Now I'm going to look out for that next time I watch that episode, because I've never noticed that it, like, just sometimes on older shows you can tell there's a little bit of like a cut or something, but
yeah, you won't be able to tell.
Yeah,
you won't be able to tell.
That's funny. I also love the imagery of like you in full Turok Han makeup and Sarah in full Buffy, and you being like, no, it's fine, I'm not hurting, it's fine. What was it like on Angel? Tell us a little bit about
Angel, you know, I love the episode I did. Unfortunately, because it's a flashback episode, I didn't get to work with the other actors on the show, other than James, and I've worked with James before. James was very complimentary about, you know, when James found out I was going to be doing that character, he was like, oh, I'm so glad you're doing that character, you know. So that was really nice. And I got to meet David finally. I had not met or worked with David before, but unfortunately, because it's this flashback episode, I didn't get to work with, I got to meet and get to know Andy and actually become friends with Andy later. And I got to know Amy a little bit later too, but I didn't get to really work with him, unfortunately, because it's a flashback episode. But we, you know, when they wrote, it was when they wrote that episode, it became very clear that if they couldn't find a standalone submarine set, they weren't going to be able to do that episode, because they didn't have the time or money to build a set for just one episode. And that standalone episode, that standalone set is actually it's the submarine set from Down Periscope, Kelsey Grammer film.
Yeah.
And it was 20th Century Props, I guess, purchased that set and kept it on their lot and rented it out to, you know, numerous different television shows and films. And we were one of the people that rented it. And yeah, so we shot entirely on that set, which was, you know, had been around for years.
That's I forget that, like, stuff like that. Like I've interviewed the Buffy season 7 costume designer a lot for like to round up the fashion for each episode, and he was telling me a lot of the suits the principals in were just suits that they had. Like that wasn't, you know, Buffy and Willow and everyone else would get new clothes, but like he was like, yeah, a lot of the side characters, it was what we had already.
Oh yeah. Oh,
around.
absolutely. Oh yeah. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting about sets, because I guess especially with those shows, usually you have like 3 sets, and that's kind of.
Yeah, I mean they had already built. You know, interestingly enough, Angel was shot over on the Paramount lot, even though it's you know, it's was on the WB, and it's you know, and it's and Fox owns it.
How does that happen?
Oh, you know, that's, you know, it's Hollywood, baby. It's Hollywood.
That's funny, because
yeah. So they were, you know, so their sets, their, you know, their Wolfram and Hart set was already there. They built that, and they used that, you know, for several seasons, you know.
That's funny. Yeah. And like, you know, with Buffy, they had like, it was usually, that's why even the construction site felt like a big change of place, because usually it's like her fights are either in a graveyard, at the school, or maybe at the house. But like this I feel like that helped make it feel like a bigger fight was the fact that we were somewhere new, and there was a lot of things for her to like get hurt on, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the scaffolding and everything. Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Did everyone, so like I know in the shot, like in the episode itself, all the characters are on the scaffolding. Did they have to be there for the whole shoot, or was it they were just there for a little bit and then they got to leave?
They were there when we were shooting, when they were in frame. But if we were shooting in from their point of view, no, they wouldn't have to be on the scaffolding. Exactly.
I was wondering how long they had to like stand up there or whatever.
I don't remember exactly, but if we were doing like a scene behind us where we were fighting and they were over here, then yes, you would have them. But generally speaking, it was more of a point of view of their point of view of the fights. So
Yeah.
of course they're not in frame then.
That's true.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What was like I know that there's a lot of talk about like what it was like with the gentleman on set, and a lot of the actors have said that like Amber Benson like has said that she was scared of the guys, everyone in the makeup. What was it? I mean, we've heard those stories. What was it like with Turok Han and Gnarl, like, and even like on Angel, like being in that makeup but being behind, like not filming, you know?
That's a good question. Yeah, because the gentleman, I did not get to know the cast as the gentleman. They avoided us, all of them. I think Mark Blucas was the only one that would come up and talk with us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the only, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm so glad you're here, But everybody else, they'd be like, we would sit for lunch, like Doug and I would sit for lunch with the crew, because the cast was scared to death of us.
To be fair, I would have also been scared of you guys.
Yeah, and like you said about Amber, said, I think in an interview, you think that, it's going to be not that scary in person. She said they were more scary in person. And I don't know if you heard this story, but she, we would go, Doug and I would go up to her and we're like, hey, how's it going? And she'd be like, hey, you're so scary. And we thought she was kidding. We thought she was kidding. Her mother actually had to come up to us and go, guys, stop going up to her. She's not kidding. She's really scared of you. And we were like, oh, because Doug and I are, pretty nice guys.
That's so funny.
Nice guy.
So yeah. So, but as the Turok Han, it's funny. With Ryan and I, we did a lot of joking around. We used to call ourselves the Uber brothers. He'd be like, I'm Uber, he's Gooba. We're the Uber brothers. So people kind of, they didn't find us scary because we kind of joked around a lot. And as for Gnarl, I don't. It's like so much of the episode was shot, with me sitting on Allie,
right.
And
touching off her skin.
Yeah, sitting on Allison Hannigan, and Allie was a really good sport about it. She didn't come off. If she was scared, she didn't say she was scared. So, but we got to know each other pretty well. I mean, she used to jokingly say to me, when I run into her, like in the future after that episode, after shooting that episode, she'd always be like, "You're my favorite demon."
That's cute. And a compliment too.
Yeah, I'd be like, "Thank you," But I don't remember people actually being scared. I think there was something about the gentleman that just, and I think partly because we were floating, and partly the makeup, and
I mean, Kim, you get scared pretty easily. What would you say? Which one would you say is the scariest?
And they're just two kind of different types of scary, even though it's
Yeah.
that, I guess that says something about your acting. I mean, like, I would say that they're both pretty effing scary in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't come across either in a dark alley.
Yeah, well, it's like, Gnarl, certainly he looks scary, but what he's doing is like frightening. I mean, he's making fun and taunting, and all the while, slowly slicing your skin off, and you're paralyzed and you can't do anything about it, but you're awake. So you're aware of what's happening. That's frightening. On the other hand, the gentlemen are, I think the reason why the gentlemen are so frightening is because the gentleman is kind of tapping into all of our childhood nightmares, where we can't scream and we can't get away. And there are these things after us, and that's frightening, not being able to scream, not being able to, like you open your mouth in a childhood nightmare and you can't scream. And that's Hush, that's really what's going on in Hush. You can't scream. People can't scream.
You saying that, like, it makes sense that you were so good at both, because I feel like Gnarl and the gentleman almost kind of have similar things, right? Like Gnarl paralyzes you so you can't do anything, but you're still very aware, and gentlemen take away your voice, but you're still very aware when they're cutting out your heart or whatever. And both are like frightening scenarios. I think the gentleman, maybe the reason it had that effect on the cast is it was kind of the first, Buffy, like we talked about, Buffy had demons before, but sometimes they'd be jokey, sometimes they'd just be like random monster that she had to punch and it was fine. But the gentlemen were like, they were like dudes in suits that had like creepy ghoul faces and hands and like were quietly cutting at you, but like,
yeah, and they were so polite.
Yeah. So polite while they murder.
yeah, as they cut people's hearts out.
With the gentlemen, did they have to take full body like cast of you guys for when the heads blew up?
No, they just used our heads. They took full face and head cast, probably, I think, down to probably shoulder. So that's what they used, and I think they only blew up 2 or 3 of us. Okay. I think, I'm pretty sure.
That makes sense. Yeah, because like you guys didn't like do the fighting or anything. It was the other little guys in the chains that did all the fighting with Buffy.
Right.
So, what's been like? Who's been someone that you wished you gotten to work with, that you've gotten to know? Because I know a lot of you do cons together, so I'm sure you've gotten to know a lot of Buffy and Angel folk.
You mean Buffy and Angel people that I haven't worked with that I would like to work with? That's, boy, I feel like, it would have been fun to work with, I can't remember his name, the actor that played Dracula.
Oh, yeah.
Because I did meet him at a con. I met him at WhedonCon a few years ago, and he's a delightful man. I wish I could remember his name. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Normally I'm better with off the top of my head, but I also am blanking on. I know it's just him and Sarah.
Kim, are you looking it up?
No.
Okay, never mind.
Little vampire teeth on my doodle.
Yeah, just him and Sarah did Days of Our Lives, or one of those soap operas together.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The actor that played him, see, I can remember this, that him and Sarah worked together on the soap opera All My Children. Okay. That's what she was on. I can remember that, but I can't. But yeah, that's because I feel like a lot of Buffy and Angel folks do a lot of cons. So I know, like, we've interviewed Amber Benson, and she's friendly with like a lot of actors that she didn't have any scenes with, and like I always think that's kind of interesting that a lot of you have gotten to know people that you worked the same job but never like together or whatever.
Right.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because Hush is iconic, right? Did you know that it was going to be, did you have any like inkling that it was going to be like turn into like the like classic episode that it is? Or was it kind of a surprise down the line that it became what it is?
We knew it was going to be very special, but I don't think most of us knew it was going to be what it was going to be. I think I think there was some surprise, even though even when it happened, we weren't like, well, I guess that isn't any surprise, but in a way it was, because it was so much bigger than we thought it would be. You never know with those episodes. I mean, Joss was known for his pithy dialogue.
Yeah.
And here he is doing an episode that has no dialogue, and it's just like, is this going to work? And I think at first I think the network was very nervous about it, if I remember correctly. So to answer your question, I think we did know it was going to be special, but I don't think we fully understood that it was going to.
Like, did you guys so you said you had watched Buffy a little bit, so like you knew that it was definitely like very different, right? Like you knew that it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me put it this way. You know, a number of years ago, TV Guide rated their top 5 TV boogeymen of all time, and number 3 was a picture of Doug Jones and I as the gentleman.
That's cool.
You know? So I don't think I would have ever guessed that. You know, I mean, it's that big. You know, it's huge. That the gentleman would be considered, you know, one of the top 5 TV boogeymen of all time.
You should be proud of that, though. That's really cool.
It's amazing. Yeah, I'm amazed.
And so I have to ask, since you've played a lot of monsters, are you into horror or no?
Yeah, I love horror. I grew up loving, you know, the Universal monsters, and I used to play with monster makeup.
Cool.
When I was 10 years old, Dick Smith, you know, published his Dick Smith's Monster Makeup Handbook in magazine form. It was, you know, Famous Monsters of Filmland published it, and my father had been a makeup artist, so I had been exposed to transformational makeup from the time I was very young.
Oh, cool.
But I got into monster makeup like shortly after that. I was like, I feel like that's where it's at, monster makeup. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you had that from as a kid. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite horror movies then? I gotta ask.
Probably my all-time favorite horror movie is The Haunting, the original Haunting.
Okay.
You know,
I
don't know.
That's the one based on the Shirley. Is it Shirley Jackson? No. Kim, help me out. Who wrote the book?
I think The Haunting on House Hill. That's not what it is. Is that what you're thinking of?
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I'm thinking of. Never mind. Sorry. But is The Haunting the black and white Vincent Price movie?
No, it is black and white, but it's not a Vincent Price movie.
Okay.
It's about a house that's haunted, and a group of parapsychologists go in to investigate this, and they actually stay at night there, and all sorts of crazy things, frightening. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But there was no special effects. It was almost all done with sound effects. And one of my favorite scenes is one of the characters. They're in the 2 of the female characters are like roommates. They're like they're sharing a room. And one of the characters, you can hear her thoughts throughout. She's the narrator, so you're hearing her thoughts throughout the entire film.
It is this book that it's based on. It is based on that book. Yeah.
Okay, and you can, and the lights are out, and there's all this noise happening outside the room, and they're like, and she keeps going, what's going on? Why is my roommate holding my hand so tight? And why is she holding my hand so tight? And then the light comes on, and her roommate's across the room, and she's like,
yeah,
who was holding my hand? And like things like that are just frightening, the way they do it. And that's I grew up watching that movie on television, and every time I was scared to be Jesus, but I just enjoyed it so much. But I love the fact that you don't see any ghosts. It's all left up to your imagination.
Did you watch the Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House? That was like,
I think it's based on the same
it's like
story.
Very loosely, but it is. Yeah, I actually did think that was like really well done storytelling.
I have not seen that. I should check it out. Yeah,
because I was trying to get Kim to watch it, but it is. And I'm a big horror person. Even I would say some of the scenes are pretty scary, and I was like, you will like the storytelling, but it might scare you too much. It's definitely worth checking out if you're a horror fan.
Okay.
And I do think it's funny how like the horror movies we saw when we were younger do kind of stick with us as like scary, even if like they're not scary by standards of today. Like they still scare you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking about that with a coworker, kind of about Friday the 13th, because right, those are like just some people getting killed. But like as a kid, I would see them late at night and they would scare the crap out of me. Like, and that like I'll still get a little scared by them,
Yeah,
even though
yeah.
I'm into like horror that has way more gore or way bigger scares, but it like sticks with me. I always find that interesting.
Sure.
Camden, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let everyone know where they can find you and find your stuff.
Oh, well, you can find me on Facebook. I'm the only Camden Toy on Facebook. At least knock wood so far. We'll see how many. And on Twitter, because there is another Camden Toy on Twitter, which is ridiculous. But Twitter refuses to take them down. I'm like, it's a fake account. And they're like, no, sorry. So it's Camden_toy.
Okay.
At Twitter. So yeah, that's how you can find me. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all later. Bye.